2020, NICHES 25th anniversary. Boy, we had exciting plans for the year, parties all over the place, hikes, floats. We were going to be seeing all of you all the time, shaking hands, hugging, eating food together. 2020 hasn't quite ended up the year that we thought it was going to be for our 25th anniversary. Irregardless, there's been a lot that's to celebrate of what NICHES has been able to accomplish in the last 25 years. Over 3,600 acres have been protected, from the savannas up north to the woodlands of the Ross Hills, as well as the forested habitats and oak woodlands of Warren and Fountain County, as well as Wildcat Creek. It's had a lot of hurdles this year with social distancing and kind of working that the organization has had to navigate, as the whole country has had to navigate. But it's been something that we've been able to successfully do and to keep moving the projects forward. The trails are still open, the creek access points are open, and one of the things that we've seen this year is that when people have lost access to movie theaters and cafes and other places of gathering, Clegg Memorial Garden, where our office is, as well as all of our properties, have seen a large uptick in use, which is very gratifying to know that when things get very tough in the community, people are turning to NICHES Land Trust and other natural areas to get respite, get a little peace of mind, and add some stability and tranquility to what has been a tumultuous year for all of us. 2020, once again, NICHES will be doing creek cleanups on Big Pine Creek, Sugar Creek, and Wildcat Creek. We've been doing this for 5-6 years now, and it's been a lot of fun to get out on the creek and have sections that we've adopted. On Sugar Creek, particularly from our Bachner to Jim Davis, when we started that program, our boats would fill up and we couldn't pick up all the trash we saw. And over the years, the last few, the trips are getting more and more like recreational trips where we're picking up what we find as the old trash, which is, comes out of the creek, gets picked up. There isn't new trash that's coming in that cause problems on the landscape. At Granville Sand Barrens, we occasionally use a controlled burning out here. Probably about every 2 to 3 years we have fire on the ground. Organizationally, we're averaging about 17 burns per season. Ever since we've been able to add a second steward 4 years ago, has really seen a big uptick in the organization's fire program. Ultimately, we feel with our current land holdings that we need to be doing about 20 to 21 burns per season. So we're not quite there where we need to be, but we're continuing to ramp up our capacity. And the fire program is an essential component of maintaining the open character of our prairies, the open character of the savanna systems, and the species that need those high light conditions, as well as the oak woodlands of Warren and Fountain County. So, exciting development to Granville Sand Barrens and Roy Whistler Wildlife Area. This past year we signed a purchase agreement for about 190 acres to the north of the property. It includes an expanse of river bottomland that's currently being farmed, as well as an old slough and a continuation of upland sand deposits on the land. We expect to acquire the ground after the current owners have enrolled it in the Wetland Reserve Program sometime in 2021. The 190 acres will add to the 80 acres that's currently protected, making this one of NICHES' largest preserves. And once the restoration is in place, it will create buffers around the slough and also create opportunities for us to create more upland sand ridge habitat, continuing the expansion of golden asters, potentially hills thistles, flowering spurge, sand milkweeds and the like, and create more viable occurrence here by adding acreage to the habitat. And the enhancement of the Granville Sand Barrens this year really started with the awareness that came from finding the Cirsium hillei site at Sandridge Cemetery near Fort Wahyottinen. Well, Cirsium hillei is a hills thistle. It is a very rare prairie plant in the state. There's just a couple locations out there, one of those being up in Newton County on Beaver Lake Prairie and Kankakee Sands Conrad Station Preserve. And their population was weak, and they were looking for areas to find new genetics to help that population out. And Stuart Orr of the Nature Conservancy embarked upon looking at historic records for the hills thistle to try and find some of those locations. Of all the sites that he checked, only one turned out any plants, and that's Sand Ridge right here in Tippecanoe County.
Early in the season, we actually visited the site with the Nature Conservancy and we collected some rosettes from the existing plants there. They took those and put them into rooting hormones in the greenhouse so that they could grow out plants to augment current populations that are genetically depauperate and are not producing any seed. They've started that process of moving some of the actual rosettes from the cemetery to these other populations to augment them. And we also collected about 30% of the seed on the site. We're hoping to still work with the cemetery so that we can keep managing the population on site, but we also thought we should get a population started somewhere where they're going to actually be protected, they're going to get regularly burned, they won't be mowed over. And so we thought, well, how about the Granville Sand Barrens? We've got the same substrate here, formed by the same glacial processes and geologic events. The companion plants are really similar, and it seemed like a really great opportunity.
Before we introduced the species out here, we reached out to Tom Swinford of the Division of Nature Preserves and solicited his support for the project. Bob Easter put together a proposal that involved the justification for it, and ultimately we received that support from Nature Preserves and before we planted them out here.
Some of the seed that I collected is going to go back to the Nature Conservancy to go for their purposes and sort of restoring their health to their populations. But we're also going to take some of that seed today and we're going to plant it up in the barrens in just a perfect hand-selected spot. I've got that all gridded out and ready to go. So let's go check it out.
When we talk about the restoration of natural areas, especially state-dedicated nature preserves, it must be approached with careful consideration and very deliberately. There is a careful review process when a new introduction of a species is proposed. It involves nature preserve staff, heritage biologists, regional ecologists, folks who are very familiar with the local communities. We find reference sites, and there's great discussion that goes into this prior to the director of Nature Preserves issuing an approval letter to proceed with an introduction into a state-dedicated nature preserve.
NICHES' goal and effort working with the township is to continue to work with them and hopefully find a long-term secure solution for the hills thistle, the fringe puccoon, which is also found on site, the spiderworts, the blue-eyed grass, the prickly pear cactus, the sand milkweeds. There's a whole host of species, 45 altogether, that have been documented from the Sand Ridge, and hopefully that'll create another occurrence of prairie and genetics for the broader region to augment what we have here. So it's been a really great collaborative project between the Nature Conservancy, NICHES Land Trust, and the DNR to really help out one of Indiana's rarest prairie species and move it forward in a secure future long term.